So, what if I told you that most of what we think about wealth, the fancy cars, the giant houses, is just completely wrong? Today, we're going to tear down that myth and get into the real wealth equation. We'll uncover the surprising truth about how financial freedom is actually built. Let's dive in. This quote right here, it's the perfect place to start because it challenges everything we see in the movies and all over social media. That image of the high-flying millionaire, yeah, for the most part, it's just a carefully constructed fantasy. The reality of wealth is way less glamorous, but as you're about to see, it's also way more achievable for the rest of us. So where does this whole myth come from anyway? Well, we're constantly just hammered with these images of what wealth is supposed to look like. But what we're often seeing is a performance, it's a show. And the very first step to building real wealth is learning to spot the huge difference between looking rich and actually being rich. Okay, so the research on this points to two pretty fascinating groups. First, you have the glittering rich, and this is a tiny, tiny number of people who can genuinely afford that over-the-top lifestyle. But then you've got a much, much larger group, the aspirationals. These are folks who make a good income, and they feel all this pressure to look the part. But the truth is, they're often living paycheck to paycheck just to keep up that illusion of wealth. This number, wow, this really puts it all in perspective. So get this, between 1997 and 2006, American households earned over $70 trillion. I mean, that's just a staggering amount of money. So what percentage of those households do you think actually became millionaires? Just 3.5%. This is the ultimate proof that a high income doesn't automatically make you wealthy. It's just fuel for the fire. Just let that sink in for a second. The person living in that million-dollar house is probably not a millionaire. That house is often a symbol of really high spending, not high savings, or high net worth. It's a liability, not an asset. And that distinction, well, it's absolutely crucial. All right, so if the person driving the flashy car and living in the mansion isn't the real millionaire, then who is? Well, the data paints a very, very different picture. And honestly, it's a much more surprising one of the millionaire next door. This slide is absolutely fascinating because it shows such a stark contrast. Researchers have these two categories: the balance sheet affluent, who are obsessed with their net worth, and the income statement affluent, who are all about their income and how much they can spend. And just look at their habits. The actual millionaires, the balance sheet folks, they're driving Toyotas and wearing suits from JCPenney. The other guys, the income statement crowd, they're the ones with the Mercedes and the Rolex. It is the complete opposite of what you'd think. And the research is just crystal clear on this. Most self-made millionaires live surprisingly normal, even frugal lives. They are laser-focused on building financial security, not on collecting a bunch of status symbols. The boat, the vacation home, the designer watch, for them, all that stuff is just a distraction from the real prize. So it all really boils down to a fundamental difference in your mindset. You can either spend your life acting rich, or you can actually be rich. Let's look at a real-world example that just perfectly illustrates this choice. But before we get to our little case study, let's just pause on this question from the source material. Is success really about having a parking lot attendant, someone you'll literally never see again, think that you're successful? It really makes you stop and think about who we're actually trying to impress with all our spending. Okay, so meet Barbara and Anna. Barbara is the before. She buys the designer shoes, the Rolex, the luxury car because she's convinced that looking the part is the key to success. And the result? She has zero net worth. Nothing. Now Anna, she's the after. She and her husband lived frugally, they built a successful business from the ground up, and only after becoming millionaires did they decide to upgrade their lifestyle. See the difference? Anna became rich and then started living rich. Barbara tried to do it completely backwards. Yet that Barbara before strategy, it's a total trap. When you spend money in anticipation of being rich, you're just pointing all your money and your energy in the completely wrong direction. Real wealth is built through discipline and saving and investing. The fancy lifestyle can only come after the wealth is secured, never before. So what is the secret then? How do the truly wealthy measure their progress? Well, it turns out there's a simple formula they use, a wealth equation, that lets them track exactly how efficiently they're turning their income into lasting net worth. It's called the Wealth Index, or WX for short. Think of it like a scorecard that measures how good you are at turning your income into actual wealth. The formula is pretty simple. You multiply your age by your pre-tax annual household income and then divide that by 10.
That number tells you your expected net worth. The wealth index then shows you how you're doing compared to that expectation. It's the key metric that the truly wealthy obsess over.
So this wealth index basically puts people into one of three buckets. At the very top, you have the prodigious accumulators of wealth, or PAWS. These are the master wealth builders, your balance sheet affluent folks. In the middle, you have your average accumulators. And then at the bottom are the under accumulators of wealth, or UAWs. And what's really interesting is that a ton of high-income earners actually fall into this bottom category. So, what does it take to be in that top tier? Well, the median prodigious accumulator has a net worth that's almost 2.5 times higher than what's expected for their age and income. They are just incredibly efficient at turning a paycheck into real, lasting wealth. Now look, this isn't just about piling up money for its own sake. The discipline of building wealth is deeply connected to a much bigger goal, a more satisfying, more secure life. Let's look at the real motivation here. This is such a profound point. We're taught from a young age that buying more stuff will make us happier, but the reality is often the exact opposite. That stress of living on a financial treadmill, constantly chasing the next big purchase, it can be absolutely exhausting. True satisfaction comes from something that you just can't buy in a store. And here they are. These are those deeper motivations. For the truly wealthy, consumption is just a tiny little side benefit. The real prize is financial independence. It's the freedom from ever worrying about bills again. It's the ability to take care of your family, the security to walk away from a job you hate, and the capacity to be generous with other people. That's the real goal. So the final question is for you. When you really look at your own financial habits, are you building real wealth or are you just building the appearance of it? Are you on the path of Anna, building a solid foundation for the future? Or are you on the path of Barbara, more focused on the here and now? It's a really powerful question, and you know what? The answer could change everything. Thanks for digging into this with me.